Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it another minute or so in case anybody else is going to join us, and then we're going to get started. Hope everyone's having a great day. Great start to the holiday season. It's going to be a little different with Corona this year, but make the best out of it. Today, Molly is with me. Melinda had a meeting, so Molly and I will go over some 1099 miscellaneous and NEC facts. We'll get started in just a minute, but we're going to really drill down on the miscellaneous and NEC components of reporting for businesses. We'll touch, if you have any questions on receiving one, let us know. But this is going to mainly be about the issuance, just because that is a much earlier deadline. Receiving a 1099, it more play into a role in your taxes. So what we're really concerned about here is just making sure that it's done, ready, and you have all the necessary information for when it comes time to file one. That deadline is January 31st, and we'll go over that. Right. So, as I said, this is Molly. She's been in the office for about 2 years now. So, and she really heads up 1099, so we thought it was important for her to be here. So, as we get started, so a quick little agenda of today. What we're going to talk about is we're going to go over who gets a 1099, the filing requirements, and the failure to file penalties that may apply, some upcoming changes, and then really those upcoming changes, they have to do with 1099 miscellaneous versus 1099 NEC, which stands for non-employee compensation. So we're going to look at the two forms. We'll show you the forms, and we'll show you what is the difference. All right, so who gets a 1099? 1099s are used to record payments not otherwise reported. So think about your independent contractors. Think about anybody that you've given a prize to that's not an employee. Think about your attorneys, your landlords, things like that. Otherwise, it would go on your W-2 or, it will go on your W-2. So there's actually 16 different 1099 forms that vary depending on the payment. So you might have a 1099 miscellaneous for landlord fees, or you might have a 1099-B to report stock sales, 1099 interest for interest. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. Each one is just a breakdown, and it drills into one area of the tax code. So for 1099 miscellaneous, there's different thresholds depending on the payment. So let's say you pay somebody $10 in royalties, you're required to file a 1099 miscellaneous for them. Whereas for legal fees, you only need if you pay them $599 or less, you're not required to file a 1099 for them. So it's a little different. Best case is file. There's no penalty that if you pay somebody $9 in royalties, there's no penalty for not filing. It's a little petty, but for some people, but when in doubt, file. That's how the IRS would like it. They just realized that, if you gave a 1099 to every single person that you pay, it would become way too arduous and to become a nightmare. So they kind of set these requirement thresholds, but there's not going to penalize you for not filing one that you were not required to. Generally, corporations do not need to be furnished to 1099, and what that means is if they have the word INC or company behind their name, they don't need to have one in most circumstances. If it's an attorney or landlord, you do need to give one regardless of whether they're a corporation or not. So if, and it's important, you gotta make, when you're writing that check, let's say you have Joe Enterprises, Inc., but you just write the check to Joe. That can cause an issue down the line. So if you see Joe Enterprises, Inc., write Joe Enterprises, Inc. on the check, and that's what's gonna save you. Another thing is that you should always ask for a W-9 before you pay. A W-9 is extremely important because it will tell you exactly whether they're a corporation whether they're a partnership, whether they're a single member LLC, a sole proprietorship, all of that information will be on there. And then you have that proof. You know, if you ask for a W-9 or let's say you have an LLC, for example, LLCs can be taxed as a single member LLC, which means it's reported on their Schedule C or a sole proprietorship. LLCs can be taxed as a partnership or they can be a corporation. So from the letters LLC, you have no idea. Asking for that W-9, it tells you, and you'll be able to know exactly what you're paying and whether or not you're required to give. So filing requirements, they are required to be filed by January 31st every year. So we will be sending out, for those of you who would like our help with doing this, we'll be sending out an email in the coming weeks just to kind of start to gather this information, gather your W-9s and fill out our forms so that we can produce ones for you. The penalty for failure to file these they're incredibly complex. It's not just one penalty, it's several penalties that all kind of cascade onto each other. It's a slippery slope. So here's an example from one of my tax classes where if you give someone $1,000, it can end up costing you an extra $1,350 easily in penalties. And this $1,350 is kind of like the bare minimum because it's $250 for failing to collect a W-9. It's $280 in backup withholding because you don't know if they should be withholding or not. So the IRS will come to you and say that it's your responsibility to pay this $280. It's $270 for failure to file. It's a $550 for intentional disregard of filing and furnishing these. So right there, we're at $1,350 in bare minimum. In that backup withholding one, that's a 28%. That is not a flat $280. So if you paid them $10,000 and you didn't issue a W-9, 1099, then it'd be $2,800. So that is going to grow, and these are going to become huge penalty amounts you just don't want to be on the hook for. Upcoming changes. So in 2020, the IRS is reviving the Form 1099 NEC. This hasn't been used since 1986. So they're really going back in the archives for this. But basically what it is it's the same thing as a 1099 miscellaneous. It's just drilled down a little bit further. So when we send out our stuff, it's going to be really important that you properly categorize the income that you're paying to people. Because it might wind up on the 1099 miscellaneous, it might end up on the 1099 NEC. And we won't have, for our bookkeeping clients, we'll know where it belongs, but if we don't do your bookkeeping on a regular basis, we might not be able to properly categorize that. So we're going to need you to do that for us. So on your Form 1099 MSC, you're going to pay your rent. You're going to have prizes and awards to people. Other income, this is usually where commissions goes. If you withheld any money for any of these reasons, it has to be reported on here. So that would be the backup withholding that you're required to do. If you have any fishing boat proceeds, that's important. Medical and healthcare payments, that's if you receive payments from an insurance company. Crop insurance proceeds, any Section 409 deferrals, or any non-qualified deferred compensation, that all goes in the 1099 MISC. Whereas the Form 1099 NEC, it's going to be services performed by someone who is not your employee. So think about independent contractor, think about the plumber that just comes in for a day. Technically, they are an independent contractor, but things like that. The cleaner, if you hire somebody to do advertising for your business, things like that are all going to be on the Form 1099 NEC. It's any cash payments for fish or aquatic life. I guess that's different from fishing boat proceeds, according to the IRS. I'm not really sure how. So if you buy fish from someone, 1099 NEC. Payments to an attorney, that's going to be NEC. And if you withheld money from any of these, it's going to be reported there as well. So very quickly, we have the two forms, as you can see. It's basically the same information. It's who's paying it, who's receiving it, and how much. And it's what it's going to be. Box 7 on the W9 on the Form 1099 WMISC is now going to be different than what it was in previous years. It's now moving towards 1099 NEC. So very quickly, what we're going to do is we're going to show you, we have our file that we use for conducting this, and Molly's going to go over this with you guys.
So this is the form that we send out once 1099 season really kicks off and we start requesting information from you that we ask you to complete for each 1099 that needs to be filed. And we also ask that for each person or business listed on here that we get the W-9 for them, or that you know that you have the W-9 somewhere on file, easily stored, so you can access that when, if so, we need it. But basically, the difference, the biggest thing on this Excel sheet this year is the column for what the payment is for. But the difference between the forms this year, we're really going to need to know specifically exactly what the payment was for. So as you're filling it out, there is a drop down feature. I don't know, I can't find the mouse right now, but there is a drop down so you can see we have some options for you, and it's just important that that field is filled out. And other than that, the form is pretty self-explanatory, and there's columns for each piece of information that we will need to complete the 1099 filings.
And like I said, we're going to be reaching out in the next few weeks with this information. It's important that we get it done by January 31st to avoid penalties. So we do ask that you return this to us by, we'll send out an email. It'll be around January 21st, 22nd, somewhere in that range, so that we can produce these and get these sent out, properly filed with the IRS, properly sent off in the mail to the person that you've paid throughout the year. So, anybody has any questions? I know we've thrown a lot at you guys today about paying someone with a 1099. As I said earlier, I know some people have joined since. We will, back closer to tax season, beginning of February, we're going to start switching webinars to what to do when you receive this information. So right now we're trying to get everybody prepared so that we can get it all filed by the start of tax season, avoid any of those failure to file or late filing penalties. And then once February kicks around, we're going to start to really look at what to do if you get one of these. Because it does have some tax items that we need to be paying attention to, and some differences than a regular W-2 would have. So anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. We're here to help, here to answer anything.
Yeah. Joe, this is Bernard. I've got a quick question.
Yes.
Do we need to file 1099 for you guys?
Abbott & Company is an S Corp, but we're one of those tricky ones where technically the legal name is Abbott & Company LLC. So we do not require a 1099, but that is a great question because we do have that LLC in our name.
Mm-hmm.
So I think previously Melinda was an LLC and a 1099 was required for her. Now we do not require one.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, well, we'll stick around for the next few minutes. Thank you all for joining today. This will be recorded and we will post this onto YouTube and onto our website. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.